Well, we're reaching the end of season 1, so episode 35 begins with Sakura's dream again. The dream started late at night with the radio tower and Sakura in her battlesuit staring at it, and Kiro, let's not forget about him who's flying above her right next to her head, and she was surrounded by cherry blossom panels. And wait, that's not all. She's staring at the figure in black with gold eyes. Now remember, it's been the same dream like this every night since episode 1, 34 episodes ago. And of course, on top of that, the cherry blossom petals turn into cards, while Sakura continues to stare at the tower. But that's when she realized as soon as she grabs one of the falling cards that falls out of nowhere, it started to disappear. That's when she couldn't help but wonder what is going on here? What happened? And as you may have guessed it, Sakura continues to stare at the radio tower and the figure in black with gold eyes. Who was that figure in black, she thought. So long story short, back to the present in the classroom of Sakura's school. That's when Sakura realizes that she's been falling asleep in class, and there's Miss Mackenzie. She was right in front of her, and she was waking her up. So by the time Sakura woke up and found Miss Mackenzie in front of her, she says, "Oh my goodness, Miss Mackenzie, I'm sorry." Miss Mackenzie told Sakura, you have been falling asleep lately. Well, I guess you could say in Sakura's case, she woke up just in time to find out that math class is over. And just in time, too. Then, after Miss Mackenzie leaves from the row of desks and goes in front of the desk to tell the class that the drill team trials are the very next day, then Sakura has a flashback about the figure in black that was there at the radio tower. And Sakura couldn't help but think to herself, could it be that Miss Mackenzie was the person that was there? And the one with gold eyes, no doubt? She wasn't sure of it. So anyway, back to the present. Now that school is over, that's when Sakura told her best friend about the dream that she had just recently, many, many times. And she says, but she's not going to discuss this with Kiro. Also, as Sakura explains in her case to her best friend Madison, she suspected that the figure in black must be Miss Mackenzie somehow. And of course, Sakura even says that she couldn't tell Carol that either, at least not yet. So even though Madison understands Sakura, but she wants to know, really? Miss Mackenzie? Why? So even though Sakura says that she isn't sure of it, but she says she has to understand what those dreams mean and what was going on. And then Madison says, let me get this straight. In your dream, the cloud cars just disappear out of nowhere too? Then Madison, although as curious and supportive as she can be, wants to know from Sakura, has it ever happened before? And Sakura says no. But Sakura says also that she's getting closer to catch all the cards. But Sakura told her best friend that whatever these dreams mean, she says in her case that it could mean a test, a premonition on things to come. And whatever's going on, she says, she's going to do her best to catch all the cards. And hopefully, she'll figure out what those dreams mean. I mean, not to say that Sakura's trying to hurt her best friend's feelings, but she says that she's going to try to pass that test, whatever that may be, might be the case on her own. Although Madison agrees with Sakura that she needs to pass this test, whatever it is, on her own, but then she needs to know, are you sure you don't want to discuss this with Kiro? Shouldn't you be doing it? No, I'm sure, Sakura says. I have to do it on my own, she says. Though Madison being supportive as she could be to Sakura, she says, all right, since you won't talk to Kiro about it, what about Lee? Well, no offense, Madison, Sakura says, but Lee is Cloudry's descendant. Besides, I want to prove it anyway. Then Madison suggested their best friend Nikki, and then said to Sakura that maybe you should speak with her about it. She has book about dreams. Maybe she should explain what those dreams mean. But once again, Sakura declines Madison's suggestion to talk to Nikki about it and said that there was no way. She must do it on her own, no matter what the cost. and she has to find out what those dreams mean, even if it meant necessary. So Madison decides to support Sakura's encouragement and says, "Don't worry, I'm sure you'll figure it out. I know you will." So later, back at school during gym practice, which is the very next day, by the way. So long story short, Chelsea was asking Nikki and Rita if they were like to attend the carnival, the winter carnival that is, that's coming up. Although Rita declined because she says that she's going to be on winter vacation. Chelsea herself thought about going to the carnival, but she too is on vacation, and along with her cousin Zachary. Let's not forget about him. Oh, I forgot to mention it was the day of the drill team trials for the guys. So Chelsea says in her case to Nikki and Rita that if Zach, which is her cousin, makes the drill team captain, she'll never hear of it, whichever that means. Now, Sakura, on the other hand, just couldn't help but get that dream of hers out of her head. And then she told her best friend Madison, who was sitting with her, that she had this terrible thought in her mind. Like, what if Kirill decides to leave her after all the cards were caught? And Sakura, however, was getting worried and concerned. So Madison says, "What about Kirill? Are you worried about something? Like maybe he's going to change or something?" Now, Madison, although supportive, she's getting concerned about Kirill as well. So even though Sakura told her best friend that something will happen to Kirill and that he is going to change, but into what? That's the question. She's not sure of it yet. Oh, and there's good news for Lee. He just made the drill team captain, and everybody clapped and applauded and cheered. So after Meilin has been hearing from Madison and Sakura who cheered on Lee, that's when Madison suggested maybe you should ask Meilin about it. So that's exactly what Sakura did. Well, anyway, speaking of Meilin, she was washing her hands. She was so proud that Lee made the drill team captain, and she's so gleeful and joyful and all that. So when Madison and Sakura approached Meilin, they wanted to speak with her. So Meilin says, "What are you two doing here? What do you want?" At first, Sakura hesitated, and then Meilin says, "I know you're up to something, Sakura." So Sakura says, "No, no, I just need your advice." So that's what the three girls did, Sakura, Madison, and Meilin. First of all, what Sakura did to Meilin was to tell her about that dream she had every single night. And she says, "No, don't take it wrong. I know you and Lee have been around with the cards for a long time. So what I need to know from you is that do you have any ideas or suggestions of what these dreams mean?" So Maylin says, "Really? So why don't you ask Hero about it?" "Well, it is a test for me," Sakura says, "so I have to figure this out on my own," she said. At first she thought and she thought and she thought, then she hesitated, and then at last, Sakura was asked by Meilin, "Why don't you ask my cousin Lee about it?" she suggested. So Sakura had that disappointed notion that she has no choice but to ask Lee Shoran. So she says, "Gee, thanks. Thanks a lot." So later that night at the Avalon residence, so it's in Sakura's upstairs bedroom that Sakura wasn't even sure whether she wants to speak with Lee when she was going to invite him to the carnival or not. So Kira wants to know, what's wrong with you? Can't you make up your mind? All you had to do is press a button on the cell phone, that's all. So guess what Kira did? So Sakura was about to talk to Lee to say that she talked to Meilin about it and that she heard about him and Meilin going to the carnival and etc. And that's when she realized, oh, Julian, is this you? So Julian was more than glad to go to the carnival with Sakura. Now remember, Julian is Sakura's brother's best friend. So instead of calling Lee, guess what Kiro did? By accident, he calls Julian, who's Sakura's brother's best friend. So while Sakura was busy talking to her brother's best friend Julian, that's when Kiro pleaded himself a case to say, "I would love to go to the carnival myself, besides I never liked Lee anyhow." So meanwhile, at the winter carnival, I'm guessing Julian was more than happy to go to the carnival with her. So in this case, I guess you could say that he actually did. And let's not forget Sakura's best friend Madison. She's there too. And let's not forget about Kiro. He's there, but he's going undercover with her. Well, luckily for Madison, she's brought her video camera, and if a you know what ever shows up around somewhere, she was more than happy to record it. So even though Kiro agrees with Madison and says, "Oh, don't worry, I'm sure it'll show up," but little didn't Madison nor Kiro know that right behind them, the reef, for some unknown reason, was engulfed in flames. Interesting. So when Madison said to Carol, "We gotta catch up to Sakura and Julian," so they head off, back with a reef that was engulfed in flames for some unknown reason. Next thing you know, the reef was charred black. What is going on? Might be a work of a you know what. Anyway, so back with Sakura and Julian, they were having a good time, and she was about to tell Julian about those dreams she's been having lately, and that's when they spotted Lee and Meilin, who were also there. So the five of them were walking together: Sakura, Lee, Meilin, Madison, and Julian. Of course, Sakura had complimented to Lee on how proud she is to have Lee make it as a drill team captain. Of course, Sakura had to confess to Meilin that by accident she had to call Julian up instead of Lee. And she seems disappointed. She says, "I just can't believe you accidentally called Julian up instead of Lee." So after Sakura apologized, that's when Meilin says, "Let me get this straight. You want me to do a favor for you, right?" "Yeah, that kind of covers it," Sakura says. "So let me see if I also get it straight. So that you and Julian can talk about the cards, right?" Sakura says, "Yeah." "Well, it doesn't fool me, not even from you, not at least for a second," Meilin said. So Sakura says, "It's very important. You gotta help me in this." "All right," Meilin says, "but you're gonna owe me so big for this," Meilin said. "But there is one thing we can't agree with," Sakura says, "that new walk that he did when he made the drill team." And of course, Meilin agrees with it. So everybody was riding on rides, from the teacup ride to the tilt-a-whirl to the Ferris wheel to the merry-go-round, and they even have cotton candy. Of course, there's no better way to do it. So after they stopped outside of the restaurant, to be honest, all four of the kids seems to be hungry. So they suggested they should eat there. And so they all head off. All five of them, that is. Of course, what's even better, they all agreed to sit outside. So anyway, oh, by the way, Tori's working there. And he was glad to see his sister and says, My, what a pleasant surprise you got there." So, what Sakura, along with Madison, Lee, Meilin, and Julian did was to order something from there. So after Sakura was surprised that her older brother's working there, and that's when everybody went to eat and drink. So that's what they did. And of course, Sakura told Tori that it would be great if she saw the kitchen along with Meilin and Sakura. "Well, I'm not surprised," Tori says, "with the way that Julian's been eating and all." "I mean, when Julian is finished eating, of course," Sakura suggested. Anyway, Tori, however, reluctantly agrees with Sakura, his own sister. So speaking of which, back with Madison and Kiro, who are taking videos as normally as any person would. Although Kiro's not exactly happy about it, and because he's so hungry, so Madison says, "If you stick with me, I'll make you a deal. I'll give you the dessert that you want." Of course, Kiro agrees with Madison's suggestion, but then he sensed that something was off. He had a thought, and then after that, he sensed a you know what, and it's close by. But he's not the only one, because Sakura at least sensed that something was off too, and they too suspected a you know what. So meanwhile, Mei Lin had saw something very interesting: a wire of lights being set on fire for no unknown reason. Tori sees it too, and so did Julian. So when Julian says, "Oh wow, nice gimmick you got there," but Tori sensed that it's no gimmick at all. And what Tori saw next was unbelievable. The wire on fire hasn't been engulfed, but that's not all. The trees and the telephone poles are being on fire too, and it's spontaneously combust for no apparent reason at all. So we know what this means. It is definitely a you know what. The third element, the powerful among powerful cards of all, fire. So Lee and Sakura head off, and that's when her brother said, "Hey, where are you going?" And then he and Julian tried to catch up with them. So when Lee went into the bushes to hide in passing Madison and Kiro by, that's when he knows what to do. He uses the time card with his sword, of course, and so everything froze. Well, except for himself and Sakura, of course. So that's when Lee says, "Use the sleep card. Hurry!" And so Sakura agrees. And that's what Sakura did. She uses the sleep card to put everyone to sleep. Well, except for herself and Lee, of course. And so, once everyone's asleep, well, except for Kiro, who I forgot to mention, and along with Sakura and Lee, he says, "Good move. That will buy us some real time." So now it's time for them to go after the fiery card, which is the third element of the cards, by the way. So Lee told Sakura that since the time card is wearing him out and he needed to rest, he says, "I got a suggestion. You have to handle this." And Sakura agrees. So what did Sakura use first? Why, the windy card, of course. Well, at first it seemed to work, and next thing you know, that's when she saw the fiery card's form in itself, of course. So when Sakura was asking Carol, "Where did you go? Where are you coming from?" "Never mind that," Carol says. And then he explains to Sakura what the fiery card does. One of the four of the elements. Very powerful and special, to say the least. So then it's Lee's turn to ask Sakura a question. "You got Windy and Water, right?" And Sakura says not only that she does have Windy and Water, the two of the elements, of course. Then Carol says, "Wait a minute. Before you can go on with your strategy, I just want to tell you that since fiery is one of the four elements and the strongest there is, you're going to need to use both Windy and Water at the exact same time. Since Windy's the one that fanned the flames, you're going to have to use them both to cool it off." So back with Sakura and Lee that were dodging the Fiery's attacks the best way they knew how, that's when Sakura ran off. So Kiro asked her, "Where are you going? We gotta get some help somehow." "Excuse me, Sakura," Kiro said. "You can use the Windy and Water cards," Kiro said. But then Lee says, "Wait a minute, you can't use two attack cards at once." "Well, just because they haven't been getting along together lately," Kiro says, "it doesn't mean they shouldn't try." Then Carol says, "Listen to me. I know this is difficult, but you'll have to take the risk. That's what you have to take anyway," he said. "Although I do admit," Carol says, "you had captured a lot of cars, but I'm afraid this is about as far as you could go." But Sakura says, "No! I have come too far. I'm not done yet." So she went back to finish what she started by capturing the fiery card. And how? By using both Windy and Water at the exact same time. So that's exactly what she did. Well, it worked. It was crazy, but it worked. And as you may have guessed it, Sakura now knows what to do. Seal the fire card once and for all. Oh, I forgot to mention that Lee was very surprised to see both Windy and Water working together. So that's what they did. So after Sakura has sealed the fiery card once and for all, that makes the third element on the cards list for Sakura, and that makes it her 32nd card on the list. And even better, Kiro begins to change. But guess what? Here's some even better news. Kiro never left her. And of course, Sakura was getting worried that he may leave her if she has caught the card itself, meaning the fiery card. But surprisingly, he never did. Oh, here's something else that's even better. Kiro got his powers back, so that means he can begin his transformation once Sakura captures the final elemental card, which is Earth, but that would come later. Then Lee just pleaded his case to say, "Well, even if you got your powers back, you're still a stuffed animal to me." And of course, Carol got upset with that insult. So while both Lee and Carol were busy having a conflict with each other, the only person that was not there was Miss Mackenzie. And where was she all this time? Well, she was just watching Carol, Lee, and Sakura all together. So later on that evening, Sakura's best friend Madison, well, good news, she woke up, but bad news, she didn't get the chance to videotape the capture of the fiery card, and she's still very depressed about it. Even Meilin, good news for her, had woken up. She too was depressed that she didn't get to see it. So not only is she with Lee, that's when she saw out the window of the Ferris wheel, by the way, and let's not forget Sakura and Julian, they're there too. And that's when Meilin pleaded her case to say, I knew it. I just knew she's planning something, Meilin said. I just knew it. So back with Sakura and Julian. Now Julian could tell that something was bothering Sakura, so he says, I can understand what's on your mind, so what's going on with you? You want to talk about it? Then Julian wants to know if Sakura needed some advice. But Sakura says, that's okay. I'm pretty sure I got it figured out already. And that's when both Julian and Sakura looked out the window. It's Kiro, and he's flying out in the sky, and look what he's doing. Well, since that's the case, since he got his powers back, things couldn't be better for Kiro. I guess you could say he decided to stick around with Sakura after all, just a little bit longer. So now that Sakura has 32 cards on her list, and Listo has 5 on his list, but there's still a lot to go. And so that ends episode 35. Thank you for watching season 1 of Cardcaptors, but don't worry, I got season 2 on the way. So make sure you like and subscribe. I'll see you soon.